When the grass is cut, the snakes will show. I gotta thank the little homie Nas for that.
No, I'm feeling good, feeling great, and yeah, very comfortable, man. Yeah.
Kind of exciting?
Very exciting. Yeah. Yeah.
Steve, this is two separate fights, but no one obviously thought that was going to happen, and obviously you're in a similar position. Did you watch the fight and your thoughts on how that all played out?
Oh yeah, I watched the fight, and you know, even before I seen that fight, I had every plan of coming here to pull an upset. I know exactly what I'm capable of, and after watching that fight, you know, I understood when you get two guys in the ring, anything can happen. When people count somebody out and everything, I just don't really get that. I think it was more shocking for the fans and for the critics, but from my understanding, you know, anything's possible when you get in the ring with another man. So.
Where do you think he's at in his career right now? He turned 37 in April, and people seem to think he's slowing down a little bit. What is your opinion on that?
I don't think that at all. I mean, because he had his last fight with Canelo was razor thin. I mean, those guys been two of the top guys at the middleweight division for some time now. So for him to have a close fight with Canelo like that, I don't think he's slowing down. At least that's just not my mentality. I trained in this fight to prepare for the best Gennady Golovkin, and that's what I'm expecting on June 8th.
Steve, he refrained from talking about Canelo during the press conference, but he really hit the "I want Canelo" in September during his last kind of tour. The fact that he said he's focused on you, but I mean, he really drilled the I want Canelo in September. Your thoughts on that? I mean, he kind of is thinking, you know, maybe get past this fight, and that's the next fight.
I mean, he's entitled to think whatever he'd like.
I like that.
You know, yeah. If he's taking me lightly, then you know he's in for a surprise on June 8th.
Look, let's face reality. Part of the reason I pushed Steve for this, I've been pushing Steve for fights that I thought he would have won. And I was pushing him for fights against a lot of these middleweight contenders and the PBC middleweights and middleweights that have been out there. I've wanted him in it because I felt he could contend with those guys. I think he can contend with Gennady. I'm not predicting victory. That's up to him. I said that to him. I got him here. You know what I mean? And he got himself here. Partially, by the way, by patience. But when you see a guy and he's talking about the next fight, that makes me feel a little bit better. You know, that look, the guy. This is a real fighter. I mean, he was a top amateur. He was recruited by the late great Manny Stewart for a reason. Manny didn't recruit people that weren't talented. He sparred with the best people in the world. You know, people that have seen him fight know he can fight, know he's an athlete. It's an unbelievable opportunity. Is Gennady the same guy he was 5 years ago, 6 years ago? I don't think so. But when you're at that height, that pinnacle, so what? So if he's 10% off his best, he's still one of the best, if not the best. I mean, he's up there in the echelons of boxing to this day. So. You know, I mean, it's not an issue of him getting in there with some diminished athlete, but you know, we wanted this fight because we thought we could sort of sneak up on him, and you got to look at the realities of the business model of what's going on in the world today. Like Gennady signed a gigantic deal with the DAZN, gigantic deal. The whole deal was predicated on getting in the ring with Canelo. Let's face realities. Like John Skipper and the DAZN brass, they're not sitting back hoping he wins. I mean, they weren't gonna. There wasn't going to be a fight that on paper was going to be a 2-1 or 3-2 kind of matchup happening right now. That wasn't going to happen. I think that they did a real favor to the public and to the boxing fans and to sports fans in general by picking someone that they don't know. I mean, someone that hasn't maybe been tested at the highest level, but has some pedigree. And by the way, he's a real good guy, as you'll be able to tell. I'm going to shut my mouth in a minute, let him do the talking. But he's a real good guy. He's smart. He's a hard worker. He's been doing this for a long time. He turned pro very late. A lot of people didn't want to fight him with a young guy because maybe he was a little bit more mature. He hadn't smelled defeat. They didn't want to upset their apple carts. So he didn't get that opportunity to get that fight that would leapfrog him naturally here. He got here more by attrition. Some other guys turned down the fight. He's sitting here with an undefeated record. They're thinking Steve Rolls can't beat Gennady. You know what I mean? Well, that's sometimes like watch out for what you ask for. I think as a fan, I would rather see a guy that's more untested but unknown has never tasted defeat, as opposed to a guy that's been at this level 3 times and lost every time, because you know what you're getting. I think part of the joy of this coming Saturday night, and it was also part of the joy of last Saturday night, was there was a degree to which people didn't know what to expect. With Andy, because he looks like, he's got that roly-poly kind of body. They really look. I mean, that to me, I never predicted a win, but I told everyone who would listen that I thought that Andy had the kind of style and hand speed or whatever to embarrass Joshua. Yeah, he embarrassed him. He also beat the hell out of him. I didn't expect that, but the part that it was a difficult fight, a lot of people, most people have written him off. I tend to think, however, Gennady hasn't written him off. I think you're going to see the best Gennady. I really do.
Steve, how much is that? You're motivated, of course, anyway, but how much maybe more has that motivated you that what you just said, people are kind of looking at you and writing you off?
Yeah, it gives you motivation because you want to prove people wrong. But yeah, I've always been very motivated, and I've always seen myself eventually getting to this level and fighting at this stage. So.
Do you think that you mentioned before if he's overlooking you, that's his problem? Do you think that he is?
No, I don't think he is. I don't, honestly.
Steve, how familiar are you with Jonathan Banks, and how do you think he will refine Triple G's fight game?
I mean, I know Jonathan Banks. He's worked with Klitschko. He was a protege of Emanuel Stewart, and I actually was in camp with him back in 2014 in Adonis's camp. I think he can bring some changes to Golovkin, but I mean, they just started working together, so who knows? It takes time for those changes to actually set in.
You briefly touched on it a couple months back, but can you walk us through getting the news for this fight, like where you were?
Yeah, I was just out. I had to run in the store one night, and my manager, Todd Christie, called me, and he said he had some life-changing news. And he presented me with this opportunity, man, and I was excited. I jumped right on it. Honestly, it's been hard, man. I've been through a lot of obstacles, like Lou said. It's trying to get these guys in the top 20, 5 to 10. I wanted all these fights. I wanted named guys, and for some reason I couldn't get that because they turned it down for whatever reason. So for me to finally get this opportunity presented to me, man, it means everything. This is what I've worked hard for my whole life.
The Raptors are in the finals right now.
Yeah.
So what would it mean? I mean, obviously life-changing for you, but what would it mean for Canada if you're able to pull off this upset?
I think it's humongous. I think it's epic. A lot of the younger kids and stuff like that, it's going to give them more inspiration and know that a guy from where I'm from, look where he's at, look what he's done, and I can do the same thing. So you definitely want to inspire the youth and just have more cameras and media and stuff like that kind of point towards Ontario as
He's
well.
very
in
highly
Canada.
regarded in Ontario. The problem is in boxing. First of all, boxing in Canada is not at a place a height at all. I mean, it's sort of diminished from where maybe it once was. Then you go to Canada, and then you have the Quebec versus Ontario, and it's the French-Canadian kids from Quebec that generally are the bigger stars now, and more attention is paid to boxing in Quebec than in Ontario to some extent. I think that's true, right?
Yeah.
And so, in addition to the fact he started his career a little bit later, he's Canadian, not French-Canadian, he's Toronto. I mean, it's sort of been a little bit of a secret. We've been together a long time. I wouldn't have, I don't want to say wasted my time, but I'm going to say it. I wouldn't have wasted my time on someone I didn't think was a hell of a fighter and a good person, and I'm sort of giddy that he's getting this opportunity because I really do think he's going to rise to the occasion. I already think he's a pretty high level guy. You know what I mean? I do legitimately think he's a top 10 middleweight who hasn't really been able to prove it. I mean, and when he's been given the opportunity to prove it, he's been thrown in there with undefeated prospects. He's beaten them. And then DeMont Nicholson's a pretty good fighter, and he's really a strong 68-pounder, a puncher. I mean, he's not a 68-pounder, but he took that fight because he couldn't get. I mean, I got him a show by. I said, look, I have DeMont. I'm like, this is a 50-50 fight. I thought going in. I said, it's not your weight class, but it's an opportunity. And his attitude was, I'm going to take any opportunity right now. I'm 35 years old. I'm 34 years old at the time. And now this is an historic moment for him. I mean, and look, he'll always have Saturday night the way Ruiz will always have it. And this is, I just think he has everything to gain and so little pressure on him. He can go in there and just be Steve Rolls. And I think Steve Rolls can be good enough to compete, you know?
Steve, non-fight question. Where will you watch these next two NBA Finals games? And Toronto's in the same position. It's 1-1, but everyone's already thinking that the Warriors are going to win. So just your take on the finals, and where will you watch these next two?
Well, tonight I'm just gonna probably just watch the game in my hotel room. Yeah, we're looking to go 2 for 2. And it's gonna start on June 8th at Madison Square Garden. Then after that, Toronto's gonna take over. So.
So, Steve, back when AJ was training, he had Drake come and visit him. So, as a fellow Canadian, do you just have like a no contact order with Drake visiting, or?
No, it's nothing like that, man. I don't believe in curses or anything like that.
I do.
Absolutely, man.
You don't get a good chuckle out of it, but I do. I'm like, look, man, when you want to speak to us, wait till after Saturday.
Steve, the last time you guys were here for the press conference, Golovkin said something to the effect that the fight is at 164 pounds, is the maximum weight. He said that he did that so that you were comfortable, which seemed like an odd answer. Can you tell us your perspective on that?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know really where that came from because, you know, my last fight's been at 160. It was a 2-day weigh-in. I weighed in at 160, and then the day up I weighed in like 167, 168. My previous fights have been mostly at 160, so I'm comfortable at 160.
Gennady's going to outweigh him in the ring.
Comfortable.
I mean, I guarantee you Gennady's going to outweigh him in the fight.
But this is something that he demanded, obviously. Right?
I mean, they set the weight. But I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I was a person like me, and I didn't discuss it with the trainer, but I did discuss it a little bit with Todd. I actually was sort of pleased because I think that from what I've seen from him, those couple extra pounds, his pop is a little bit better. You know, I mean, when he fought at 165 or whatever against Damon, everyone was like, Damon's the puncher. I mean, he had some real pop in that fight, and I said to myself, you know, when I heard that Triple G wanted the 164, I was like thinking to myself, wow, that's sort of like right in our wheelhouse.
How do you feel about that, Steve?
Yeah, I'm good with it. I'm comfortable. I mean, I fought as an amateur as 165, and I have fought earlier in my career as a professional, around 165 or above. So yeah, I'm good with it.
I mean, you know, also we got to remember because most of his fights I couldn't get him regional title fights or whatever. So you don't fight at the weight; you fight a little bit over the weight. So most of the times he's fought have been right around this weight. There's been a lot of fights at this kind of weight. So it's sort of that's not an issue. I don't think it's going to be an issue for him. I think it's going to be an issue for Gennady. Though I do expect, I expect Gennady to be the heavier guy in the ring, but I don't know that helps either.
How much do you think you'll weigh? Sorry, how much do you think you'll weigh in the ring?
Coming in the fight, I'll probably weigh around like 167 to 170. Yeah.
Could you give us your opinion on why you think these things about Gennady? Or how do you rate him?
So sorry, what was that? Like,
Gennady, what do you think?
How do I rate him?
Yeah.
I mean, I rate him as one of the best. He's been one of the most dominant middleweights in the last era, and yeah, I still think he's one of the top guys.
Because what do you like about him? Can you break it down a little bit? His strengths.
You know, he has so much experience, even dating back to his amateur career. I think he's really an all-around fighter if he needs to be. He's very strong, cuts off the ring. I mean, from seeing his training and stuff like that, it looks like he's trying to be a little more fluid and a little more slicker, but who knows what's going to happen once he gets hit in the ring, if he's going to go back to his own style. But yeah, man, I got all the respect for Gennady. Like, he's proven himself.
Does his power concern you?
I'm aware that he's strong, obviously, but I've been in there with cruiserweights that hit hard. I've sparred with cruiserweights that knock people out, and was able to handle their power. So, I mean, I understand and I'm aware of his power, but it's not concerning to me.
Did you think that he won one or both of those fights against Canelo?
I definitely think he won the first fight with Canelo. The second fight was pretty close. It was razor thin, could have went either way. Maybe Canelo by a round, but it was controversial, man. Like, it could have went either way. But I definitely felt that he won the first fight.
you feel that this being his first fight with Jonathan Banks kind of plays into your favor, being that they've never shared a ring in fight together, and he's always had that Abel Sanchez voice in his ear, and if something goes wrong, that relationship isn't quite established.
See, I look at things differently when I train. Like, it just helps me to prepare mentally and physically. Like, I'm looking at the situation from my perspective that he got a new trainer and he switched up what he needed to do. He did what he needed. All the flaws that he's had and stuff like that, him and Jonathan have corrected them. I can't look at it like I'm getting an advantage because he switched trainer right now or because he's getting old. I can't start thinking about those things, man. Because then, it could possibly allow you to slip or just ease up a little bit on your training. Like I said, I'm thinking that Gennady's coming in at his best, that he made the right decision with Jonathan Banks, and he's improved much more than, well, there's not a lot to improve on Gennady's game, but he has made the little adjustments and improvements that was needed, that was necessary.
Steve, did you ever start to feel like you would not get this type of opportunity because it took so long for that to happen?
Yeah, there was times I felt like that. And then I talked to people that were close to me and people that really supported me and believed in me, and they said, just keep pushing, man, like things are gonna happen for you. And I knew in my mind too, I was like, you know what, like I've been through so many obstacles and ups and downs and stuff like that, and I just, I pray to God, and I just like, I know eventually, I just knew that one day this was gonna come. But yeah, have I had doubts, and I thought that, I'm like, man, like even after my last fight, and I know Lou was working his butt off as well. I'm just like, man, is this really gonna happen? And then, it's crazy because like a month later, I got a call for this fight. So I mean, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, I was concerned about his career a couple of times because, like, he had the fight with Steve Woodall, who was being trained at the time by Ronnie Shields in Houston, and Steve was considered a real blue chip prospect, and people thought Steve was because Steve's never had the reputation of being a real power guy, and people thought that Steve Woodall had an opportunity to hurt Steve. No, it went the other way around. He knocked the other kid out, pretty much really derailed his career completely. And I thought that was going to cause an opportunity, and it took the reverse kind of situation because now all of a sudden then I'm calling about fights, and they're going, well, what do I want to put my guy in with your unknown Canadian kid that just whacked this guy out? I don't want that risk. I don't want that smoke. It's risk, no reward. So then I'm like, fuck. And then I got him to do the DeMond Nicholson fight. Well, guess what? He knocks DeMond down in the fight, and he looks good. And the fight is a fight of the year candidate. And then same kind of thing. Like it was like, and then at that point, again, unknown. It just was like, and then you're sending a guy who's in his mid-30s, undefeated, never made the. I mean, this guy's had to work, be a personal trainer, do his thing to support his family. Do you know what I mean? Because in boxing was the $10,000, $5,000 paydays to keep busy aren't supporting your family. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting there and I'm going like, fuck, I'm like really hoping this kid's not going to have like a mental kind of lapse and lose one of these keep busy kind of fights. But look, he's a real pro. I mean, he's got a, I've thanked him many times. I'm going to do it publicly now in front of you guys, but I've done it privately with him many times. Is that like, I've said this to him. I said he's a grown-ass man. Like, I mean, he's a good guy. You could tell by talking to him. This is what you're seeing right here is what you get all the time with him, right? I mean, you know what I mean? So I didn't have I wasn't like babysitting a kid or dealing with a fighter that was like didn't understand things. Like you could sit here and he saw I was working hard and I couldn't do what I couldn't make things happen that I couldn't make happen, and he knew that. But I knew that there was going to be a moment, and I really did feel that this was the right moment because on paper Gennady's supposed to be a big favorite. He is a big favorite, okay? But I thought to myself, and I thought that for the purposes of what I knew what they were looking for, which was someone who passed the credibility test, the smell test, but that they didn't think had the pedigree or the experience to derail the plan for a Canelo fight. Now, he and I think, and our team, and we feel a little bit differently. However, he fit that sort of bill. He hasn't been tested at the level of the Gennady. And I also thought to myself, and I made this point to Tom Loeffler and to the people around Gennady, too, that they were better off with a Steve Rolls than with someone that had 5 losses, and every single time they stepped up to a higher level, you knew what was going to happen, because at least there is intrigue here. You know, no one can tell me he's not a professional fighter. No one can tell me he doesn't have any pedigree at all. No one can tell me he's not deserving of this opportunity, right? His whole life. Andy Ruiz, his grandkids are now set for life. No matter what happens in the rematch, Andy Ruiz has stepped. He's already a millionaire, multi-millionaire, or at least a millionaire. And I don't know, like, I'm going to count his money, but with the rematch, his grandkids are set for life off of one night. One night. That's the drama of boxing. That's the theater of boxing. That's what makes this sport so different than everything else, even different than MMA. It's different than any other combat sport. There's no sport more unforgiving than boxing. There's no sport where you can change your fortune, the fortune of. He just had his first job. You know, you could change the fortune of your children, your grandchildren in one night. You know, and look, I'm thrilled to see what happens Saturday. I'm thrilled as his friend and his promoter, but I'm thrilled as a fan. I actually think this is going to be fun. You know, I do. I think Gennady knows he's in with a real fighter. I know Jonathan Banks knows. You know, he's in with a real fighter. It's going to be a real fight.
Steve, did you have a boy or a girl?
I had a girl.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thank you.
How old is she?
She's just turned 6 months last week. Yeah.
What's her name?
Sadea.
How do you spell?
SEDEAH. She's gonna be on my gloves.
At times, how hard was it to juggle the personal training job and your boxing career?
You know what? It wasn't really that hard because you can make your own hours, and even though I had to do that, like, you know, I always put boxing first, and I was able to, you know, get all the training in and train as much as I needed and stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, and even the difficulties I was having in making the big fight, it wasn't because he wasn't ready. Because the one thing that he's always been is in shape.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's never in shape. There's no, like, Steve rolls out of shape. There's like, the guy lives in the gym. I mean, he's in the gym all the time. That's what he does.
Steve, what has it been like to, you have this moment, but it's in New York, so when I was walking around Times Square, I see your name in the picture, and you walk in Madison Square Garden. I mean, your feeling when you see that for the first time?
No, it's crazy, man. It's very rewarding, man. It makes you, like, realize, like, all the hard work that you've done, all the sacrifice, all the obstacles you had to overcome. It was all worth it, you know. And like I said, I'm not just satisfied with that as much as I appreciate it. I love it. It's surreal, but I'm not just satisfied with that. I'm not just saying, okay, I got here and that's that. Like, I'm going in there to win this fight, and, you know, I really believe that this is going to be the next chapter in my career.
Like, there've been a lot of upsets this year, and there've been a lot of situations where guys, he hasn't smelled defeat yet, but where guys had bad defeats, and people have written them off, and they came back, like Julian. I love Julian Williams, one of my favorite fighters, and a great kid, and Jamel, Tony Harrison. I mean, you go through the list of these guys, and there's one thing, like, people don't understand, like, these guys work really, really effing hard. And the fact that they're not making a lot of money at that moment, or that you're not seeing their pictures and lights, and they're not on TV all the time, there were a lot of guys out there working their fucking asses off to get themselves into this position and give everything they have.
Well, Lou, you talked about the connection you have with Steve, with your appreciation for this building in New York boxing, to see that. His name in
I love it, but he deserves it. See, the thing is, too, is that it's funny, because I was, at one point I did snap out at the fans a little bit, and I put a tweet out early when there was a criticism, and you wrote, Todd, you said something to me back about it. What?
It doesn't sound like
Yeah, right. But it was because they were like, oh, you're fighting a fucking tomato can, you're fighting a bum, this guy doesn't deserve to be there. No. Like, fuck you. You want to say that the guy is a big underdog, that's fine. You want to tell me, but don't tell me the guy's not a fighter, don't tell me he doesn't belong there, don't tell me he hasn't worked his fucking ass off to get there. You know, and Andy Ruiz worked his ass off, and you know, Julian Williams worked his ass off. Herring worked his ass off. Tony Harrison worked his ass off. And every one of them was doubted, you know. And what they did, they got in there and they did what they do. You know, and by the way, look, this is boxing. He could land the punch and knock Gennady out. Gennady could hurt him early in the fight. Shit happens. It's boxing. I'm not prognosticating what's going to happen, but don't tell me he don't belong. And from a standpoint of a fan, I'll say this way: give me new blood every time. Give me a guy that's actually out there with something huge to gain, knowing that that's his moment, as opposed to giving me a guy that has the mentality of an opponent. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are guys that have perennial contenders. I respect them, but I don't love to see them recycled over and over again, because ultimately there's the perennial contender type of guy. When he gets in this opportunity, he does what he always does. Whereas in Andy Ruiz was just a bad fucking pick. Just a bad move. You know, a guy with great hand speed, doesn't even look the part, or whatever. You look at the whole thing. Now the friggin' guy is a cult figure, and he deserves to be. You know. And by the way, now you're seeing all these guys come out of the woodwork and say, I picked Andy Ruiz. Bullshit. No one picked Andy Ruiz. But I'll tell you what, though, no one picked Andy Ruiz, but a lot of people knew that he had good hands. A lot of people knew that he was slick, and most people were thinking themselves, I don't really understand this selection. I don't really understand why this is the replacement opponent. You know what I mean? A lot because they thought he might make Joshua look bad, right? Look, he turned out to be, guy lost once to a world-class fighter in his career. And he got in there, and Joshua didn't have his night, and he had his night, and he executed perfectly, and now his grandkids are rich. You know what I'm saying? And this guy's going in Saturday. What does he have to lose? Go in and do him. Be him. That's it. You know? He can't control what Gennady shows up. You got to assume it's a Hall of Fame fighter. He's walking in the ring with him, because that's what the guy is, you know. But he deserves the opportunity, and I think it's going to be a fun fight. I really do.
Everybody good?
Thank you. Thank you
That's
so
good.
much.